We'll get back to that coming up in just a little bit and bring you the latest, but I do want to get back to a big story that we have been following all throughout the day. The body cam video showing the violent interaction between Tyre Nichols and Memphis police will be released tonight around 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This comes one day after 5 Memphis officers were charged with second-degree murder in the death of Nichols earlier this month, 3 days after he was apparently beaten. I do want to bring in Tyrone Powers, a former FBI special agent and Maryland State Trooper. He is with Powers Consulting Group, which does police training and is a use of force expert witness in trials. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be with you.
Of course. So the big question here that we have received a lot is about use of force and excessive force. Is more training needed, in your opinion, for police officers nationwide, especially when you see a case like this?
Well, a couple of things. Training is always the more training you can get, it's always a good thing. However, when you look at a particular case like this and some of the other more recent cases across the nation, some of them publicized, some of them not publicized, what you have is officers who know that their force that they're using in this particular instance is excessive, and in this case, even brutality. In other words, excessive force is more than the force necessary to legally effectuate an arrest, to overcome resistance. There are 4 categories: compliant, non-compliant, resistant, non-resistant, and to overcome, or combative rather, to overcome that. After you get past that, after you have done everything that is necessary to effectuate an arrest, using only the force necessary to take care of that, then it becomes police brutality. So police officers are trained in that. There's a use of force continuum. There's a use of force model. There's use of force in-service training. There's training conducted by legal staff in police departments. Certainly when I was in the FBI, on a yearly basis, there was use of force training and update on cases like Connor versus Graham to the extent of the use of force. There were updated training whenever new equipment was introduced, whether it was a taser or a baton to a department, because not all departments have the same kind of equipment. So police officers know better. More training is a good thing, but in most of these cases, police acted outside of that, knowing that they had surpassed the limits that they were allowed to use based on their training, based on the use of force continuum, based on the use of force model. And what I'll add to that is that speaks to a culture in a police department. So police chiefs, commanders, first line supervisors, besides providing the training, have to make sure that they are overseeing and making sure that the training is being implemented in a fashion consistent with policy, practices, and best practices. The DOJ have model use of force agencies where they say this is the best use of force policy. This is how it should be done in these particular situations. The Federal Law Enforcement Training Center has scenario-based training. They can get it online. They can go to the center. So all of this is available. But chiefs of police, commanders, first-line supervisors have to make sure that the people who are being trained in the use of force model and use of force methods and the use of force continuum actually carry that out, have to implement that. I think what is happening across the nation is in many situations and cases we hear chiefs of police, commissioners of police agencies after these incidents occur saying this is not what we train, this is not what we do. And so because it has happened repeatedly, in instances that we don't even know about. Not all of them are videotaped. Not everybody is indicted. Sometimes it's handled administratively. Because it's happening in different agencies across the nation, it speaks to a culture in which police chiefs, police commissioners now have to draw a bright yellow line as to what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Once their training is tight and right, they have to make sure that first line supervisors, commanders, and others are making sure that it is implemented in the right way, and that anyone who is not acting in accordance to policy, training, and practices, best practices, are effectively removed from the police department or put in a unit that does not allow them to engage with the public.
Your thoughts based on your experience with these 5 officers being charged with second-degree murder and being let go from the Memphis Police Department. In your experience, because you do have a lot of it, what were your thoughts on them being charged and released from the department? Are you surprised? Did you expect it?
The reason why I wasn't surprised, in many cases we do investigations. We want to make sure that we've got it right, make sure that there weren't extenuating circumstances or mitigating circumstances depending on a particular situation. But once the chief of police and others in Memphis viewed the body-worn video, the film from the body-worn video camera, and was able to review that, it was clear to me that they could make an assessment. Remember that most chiefs of police, most people are associated with making these decisions, have experience in police agencies. They don't become police chiefs overnight. So they've watched they know what should happen. And when they see something that immediately say, we have to take action against this, then they take action. Apparently, in this particular situation, the video that many of us will probably see at some point today, was so clear and convincing that it didn't take a long investigation. It required immediate action. And I think that if the video demonstrates what the chief has indicated that it demonstrates, she said there was inhumane treatment, then her actions shouldn't be surprising. In fact, they should be expected. And based on her statements, I was not surprised that the action took place quickly and swiftly. I was not surprised that a grand jury was convened. It's not difficult to convene a grand jury. Many of them are already convened looking at other cases, but this case was pushed to the forefront as a priority to get charges, to have a grand jury look at this particular case, and that they have moved swiftly in this particular incident. We always do this comparison, which is unique, I think, in our thinking. We'll say that there's violence on the streets of our cities across this nation, city, counties, suburban areas across this nation. And it seems that when there are police shootings or police violence, it always gets a higher level of attention. Well, that's reasonably expected, because the reality of the matter is when individuals take an oath to serve and protect, when they are trained in preserving the sanctity of life, there's a higher level of expectation. I don't think anyone should become the victim of any violence, but certainly the people we train who have taken on a position, who said that I will serve and protect, preserve the sanctity of life, do my part in the criminal justice system. There's three components of the criminal justice system: police, courts, and corrections. I will do my part in the criminal justice system. And when they violate that, then it always brings swifter attention, because it means that now people have a fear of both the cops and the robbers. And you can't have a civilized society or a civilized city, county, suburban area where people are afraid of both the cops and the robbers. You have to do something about that immediately to say, fear the bad people. The police should be known as the good people, and you shouldn't have that kind of paranoia where you're fearing, again, both cops and robbers.
When you talk about the swift action that happened here and those charges against the officers, do you think this is going to serve as a kind of learning experience to other departments? It's not the first time by far that we've seen something like this, but do you think this one specifically will serve as any sort of I guess, catalyst to some change there in several departments?
I think it will serve as a catalyst for the change for the chiefs and the commissioners to assess their culture before it gets to this particular point. If you listen to, this chief, as she talked about the inhumane treatment, the groupthink, the fact that these individuals acted so far out of what their training was, and they acted in accordance, and no one decided to intervene or intercept or stop verbally. I'm not even talking about having a police officer physically put hands on another police officer, which they are allowed to do because they have sworn to uphold the law against everyone, whether they're in blue jeans or blue uniforms. But the fact that there was no verbal intervention will have police agencies, police commissioners across the nation, even as we speak, reassess the culture in their police departments. I think it will change in the sense that they will require first-line supervisors to make sure there's a bright yellow line. The police officers are not put in harm's way. Nobody are asking police officers that if you are attacked if you feel like your life is threatened, that you cannot defend yourself. But this kind of incident, this kind of group thing, speaks to a greater culture in policing. We have assessed this issue of police use of force, police brutality, many times in black and white. The victims were unarmed, black people. In this particular case, you have black police officers. So it speaks to a culture which we hope that by looking at this particular incident, looking at the groupthink, looking at the response of 5 different officers, whether they were actively participating or whether they failed to intervene, says to police chiefs, I've got to make sure that there's a bright yellow line from my command staff all the way down to my first line supervisors, that they make it abundantly clear that we will follow the police practices, training, the use of force methods, the use of force continuum, the use of force model, consistent with the sanctity of life, preserving and protecting the lives of the citizens, the police officers, and the perpetrator. Because police officers, don't forget, to be judge, jury, and executioner. Their job is to take the individual into custody for the purpose of charging them with a crime. There's a job for the prosecutor, there's a charge for the courts, and then there's a job for correction should they be convicted.
All right, Tyrone Powers, thank you so much for that great insight there. Obviously, you're an expert, so I love hearing from you here about this topic. And of course, we are going to see that video a bit later on today. Thank you again for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me on. Glad to be with you.